This information is presented by Bluewater Auto Restoration. Welcome back. This is week 21 of the 2026 Bluewater Auto Restoration podcast. We release new podcasts every Saturday morning. In this deep dive, we look at how kids get hooked on cars.
Exactly. Yeah, so glad to be back.
Yeah, it's a great topic today. But real quick, before we jump in, just a quick reminder for you listening at home, make sure to visit the BluewaterAutoRestoration.com website.
Right, definitely check that out.
And as always, just a reminder, our podcasts are available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or SoundCloud. So, wherever you get your audio.
Yep, we are everywhere.
So I want to start today by having you listening just imagine a scenario for a second. Imagine it's 98 degrees outside. The heat is literally radiating off the asphalt, in those visible wavy lines.
I know that feeling. It's brutal.
Right. Just miserable. And you are stranded on the shoulder of a highway just outside of Memphis. And you're in a 40-year-old, immensely complicated German luxury car that you, for some reason, bought completely sight unseen.
Which is always a fantastic life choice, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. The best. So the air conditioning has just suffered a catastrophic failure, and your 5-year-old daughter is sitting in the passenger seat, just sweating profusely.
Oh, man. That sounds awful.
I mean, for most rational adults, that scenario is a waking nightmare. It is the exact moment you pull out your phone, you call a tow truck, and you just deeply regret every single life choice that led you to that specific roadside.
Yeah, you're just questioning your sanity at that point.
Exactly. But here's the wild part. For an entirely new generation of automotive enthusiasts, this exact moment, this specific miserable grease-stained struggle, is actually the absolute holy grail.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you frame it like that, but it is fundamentally true.
It really is.
We have spent, the last 10 years listening to this incredibly pervasive panic narrative from industry analysts. They've been telling us that the youth simply do not care about cars anymore.
Right, that the romance is just dead.
Yeah, killed off by smartphones, ride-sharing apps, and just a general apathy toward anything that doesn't have a glowing touchscreen on it.
The death of car culture, basically.
Exactly. But our mission today is to dig into a massive stack of recent survey data, plus some personal journals from longtime collectors that just completely shatters that myth.
I mean, it blows it out of the water.
It really does. We're going to explore the hard, undeniable numbers, proving that young people are actually flocking to the classic car hobby.
And not just the numbers, right?
Right, exactly. More importantly, we're going to look at the deep psychological and, mechanical reasons why they're doing it in an increasingly digital world, and then how you can actively mentor the next generation to keep that spark alive.
I love that, because this narrative of the death of car culture has been hammered into us for so long that it felt like an undisputed fact.
Oh, totally. Everyone just accepted it.
We saw falling car ownership rates among millennials for over a decade, and the industry pundits, they just lazily slapped a label on it. They called it a cultural shift.
Right. They claimed millennials just fundamentally lacked any interest in driving.
But the recent data we are analyzing today reveals a completely different reality. It wasn't a lack of interest at all.
Not even a little bit.
No, it was simply a lack of funds. I mean, you look at a generation that graduated into massive economic recessions, carrying crushing student debt, facing skyrocketing housing costs.
Yeah, they were just broke.
Exactly. They wanted the cars. They just couldn't afford the entry fee.
Well, we basically mistook a macroeconomic crisis for a cultural evolution. And the proof of that mistake is manifesting right now as Generation Z steps into the market.
Right. So these are the kids born roughly between, 1997 and 2012?
Yep, that's the demographic. And a recent, highly comprehensive survey of automotive enthusiasts reveals just a staggering statistic. 60% of Generation Z respondents are highly interested in owning a classic car.
Wait, hold on. 60%.
60%.
That is a massive majority. I mean, that isn't a fringe, obvious group. That is a mainstream generational desire.
It absolutely is. And to put that 60% into its proper context, you have to look at the older generations.
Okay, let's hear it.
So that exact same survey asked baby boomers, the generation we culturally associate with the golden age of the automobile, the people who literally invented the modern classic car hobby. They asked them the identical question.
And what was their number?
Only 31% of baby boomers expressed that same high level of interest today.
Oh, wow. So Gen Z is currently showing nearly double the enthusiasm for classic car ownership as their grandparents.
Yeah, double. It's wild.
The people who grew up on iPads want old cars more than the people who grew up in the 1960s. I mean, that is a total paradigm shift.
It's completely counterintuitive to everything we've been told.
And it goes so much deeper than just, liking a vintage aesthetic on a social media feed, right?
Yeah.
Because the data shows that 77% of Gen Z respondents say they genuinely love the physical act of driving.
Yes, the actual mechanics of being behind the wheel.
And even more shockingly, 32% of them currently own or have owned a classic car.
Which is incredible.
Yeah, they are actually edging out millennials, who are sitting at 30%. These kids are physically buying these vehicles.
But here's the paradox, and it is a massive one.
Okay, hit me.
At the exact same time, we are seeing this unprecedented spike in Gen Z coveting and owning classic cars. The data also shows something else. Only half as many 17 to 20-year-olds hold a full, unrestricted driver's license today compared to 35 years ago.
Wait, what?
Yeah, license rates have plummeted.
That is the great contradiction of modern automotive culture right there. And it is the primary reason the industry analysts got the narrative so wrong for so long. They were looking at the driver's license data in a total vacuum.
Exactly. They saw fewer licenses and assumed zero interest.
But how can those two facts possibly coexist in the same universe? You are telling me there is a historic, measurable drop in teenagers actually bothering to go to the DMV and get their driver's licenses, but simultaneously a massive spike in those same young people wanting to own classic cars.
It sounds impossible.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot drive the classic car if you don't have the license. It feels like two completely incompatible realities.
Well, it only feels incompatible until you separate the concept of transportation from the concept of hobby.
Okay, expand on that a bit.
Think about how the fundamental architecture of our cities, our social lives, and our technology has evolved over the last 3 decades. Driving as a pure utility-like, driving as a chore to simply exist in society, has been rendered largely obsolete for young people.
Especially those in urban and suburban environments, right?
Exactly. If you want to go to the store, you can just have groceries delivered to your door in an hour. If you want to see your friends, you have unparalleled digital socialization through gaming headsets and video calls.
You don't actually have to leave the house.
Right. And if you do need to physically move across town, you have a supercomputer in your pocket that can summon a rideshare driver in 3 minutes. Or, you can hop on an electric scooter sitting on the corner.
Yeah, so you do not strictly need a personal vehicle along with the crushing burden of insurance, gas, and parking just to participate in daily life.
Bingo. Getting from point A to point B is a solved problem.
It no longer requires a 2-ton machine that depreciates in your driveway.
So the car has been completely demoted as a necessary appliance. But, and here's the crucial part, in being demoted as an appliance, it has been elevated to a deliberate, passionate hobby.
That makes so much sense.
It is following the exact same cultural trajectory as the mechanical watch or the vinyl record.
Oh, that's a brilliant analogy.
Right, because we do not need a spring-driven mechanical watch to tell time. The phone in our pocket syncs to an atomic clock. We do not need a vinyl record to listen to music. We can stream the entire history of recorded audio from the cloud.
But people spend thousands of dollars on mechanical watches and turntables.
Exactly. Because the tactile, physical experience of using them is the entire point.
Yeah, it's not about utility anymore.
For Generation Z, getting a driver's license just so you can sit in stop-and-go traffic to commute to a high school is a hassle. But getting a license so you can take a lightweight 1990s sports car out on a winding canyon road early on a Sunday morning, feeling the mechanical feedback through the steering wheel.
That is an event.
It's an experience. It is no longer about utility at all.
It's the elevation of the automobile from a toaster to a musical instrument. I mean, you don't buy a Fender Stratocaster to commute to work. You buy it to feel something, to master a skill, to interact with a machine on a visceral level.
I love that. A musical instrument. That's exactly what it is.
So since we now know who is buying these cars, we really have to look closely at what they're actually buying. And this is where the definition of the word classic gets a massive disruptive update.
Oh yeah, the old guard of the hobby really needs to brace themselves for this one.
They really do, because the hobby is entirely reliant on the engine of nostalgia. And nostalgia, by its very nature, is a moving target.
Always shifting.
Right. What was nostalgic for a 50-year-old in 1995 is completely irrelevant to a 30-year-old in 2026.
Totally irrelevant. The data proves that we have officially entered the era of the young timer.
The young timer. Such a great term.
Yeah, that is the industry term gaining traction for vehicles built in the 1980s and 1990s.
Which is funny because if you ask a boomer to define a classic car, the image conjured in their mind is instantly a 1960s Ford Mustang or a 1957 Chevy Bel Air.
Or one of those massive chrome-laden tail-fin Cadillacs from the Eisenhower administration.
Exactly. But those cars mean absolutely nothing to a 25-year-old.
Nothing at all.
That is not what Gen Z and millennials are obsessively typing into the search bars of digital auction sites.
Oh.
So what are they looking for?
Well, the specificity of what these different generations are gravitating toward is incredibly revealing. Let's look at Generation Z first. The absolute, undisputed king of the entry-level classic market for this demographic is the first-generation Mazda Miata.
The Miata.
Specifically, the NA chassis, which was produced from roughly 1989 to 1997.
Okay, so paint a picture of that car for the listener because it is so fundamentally different from a classic muscle car.
It really is. The NA Miata is basically the antithesis of the heady, V8-powered American muscle car. It is a tiny, incredibly lightweight Japanese roadster.
Super small.
Yeah, I mean, it weighs barely over 2,000 pounds.
Yeah.
It has a very modest 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine, but has perfect 50-50 weight distribution. A brilliantly engineered manual transmission where the shifter literally feels like a toggle switch.
Just click, 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 click.
Exactly. And a manual steering rack that transmits every single pebble on the road directly to your palms. And crucially for its aesthetic appeal, it has those iconic pop-up headlights that make the front of the car look like it is cheerfully smiling at you.
I know exactly what you mean. It is the ultimate expression of the slow car fast philosophy.
Oh, absolutely.
You can ring out every single gear, you can push the engine to the absolute red line, you can feel like a Formula One driver, and you are still only doing 45 miles an hour.
It is accessible, non-lethal fun.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Gen Z. What about millennials?
Well, the survey data shows millennials are aggressively funneling their money into a completely different segment. We're seeing a massive, market-altering surge of interest from millennials in the GMT 400 series of Chevrolet and GMC pickup trucks.
The brick-like dad trucks?
Yes, the quintessential dad trucks. These are the square-body, heavily creased trucks produced by General Motors from roughly 1988 to 2000.
Okay, yeah.
They call them the OBS or old body style. They have massive bench seats, incredibly simple throttle body injected V8 engines, and just a really rugged utilitarian aesthetic.
But why that specific truck? I mean, why are millennials dropping $20,000 or $30,000 on a pristine work truck from 1994?
Because it represents a specific era of rugged reliability that they watched their fathers or uncles rely on. It is the truck that hauled the drywall for their childhood home.
Oh, I see. It's the memory.
Exactly. It represents an era before pickup trucks morphed into $70,000 luxury vehicles with massaging leather seats, panoramic sunroofs, and 12-inch infotainment touchscreens.
It is honest, unpretentious machinery.
Very honest. And right alongside those trucks, we are seeing the absolute explosion of 1990s Japanese domestic market icons.
The JDM stuff.
Yep. Cars like the twin-turbo Toyota Supra, the rotary-powered Mazda RX-7, the all-wheel drive Nissan Skyline. These are the cars completely dominating the high-end digital auction block right now.
You know, it feels exactly like the boom in vintage video game collecting.
Oh, that's a really good comparison.
Right. Like if you look at what millennials and Gen Z are actively collecting in the gaming space, they aren't going out and spending their disposable income on the antique wooden toys or the tin wind-up cars that their grandparents played with.
No, they don't care about those.
They aren't even buying Atari systems. They are dropping serious, heavily contested auction money on factory-sealed Super Nintendos, original PlayStation 1 consoles, and mint-condition Game Boys.
Yeah, the stuff they actually played.
Exactly. They're buying the specific objects they remember from their own childhoods. They are buying the posters that were on their bedroom walls when they were 10 years old.
The things they desperately wanted but couldn't afford on a paper road allowance.
They aren't buying what a museum curator tells them is historically significant. They are buying what holds intense, personal, emotional resonance.
And value in the collector market is entirely driven by that emotional resonance. A 1957 Chevy has zero emotional resonance for someone born in 1998.
Makes total sense.
And this shift in taste is also revealing a fascinating divide in how these younger buyers actually want to use the vehicles.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, for example, the survey data shows that overall, across all combined age demographics, 38% of enthusiasts say they want to own vintage SUVs.
Okay, like the old Broncos.
Right, the old Ford Broncos, the removable top Chevy Blazers, the aluminum-bodied Land Rover Defenders. The overarching market loves the rugged off-road aesthetic. But Generation Z is fiercely bucking that trend. Only 26% of Gen Z enthusiasts are interested in vintage SUVs.
Wow, that is a significant drop-off.
It really is. They don't want to sit up high and bounce around on solid axles.
They are heavily biased toward the driver-focused, lower-to-the-ground, corner-curving sports cars. They want that connected experience.
Exactly.
And we really have to talk about the massive economic catalyst for all of this, because this cultural shift was certainly simmering under the surface for a while, but it absolutely exploded like a powder keg during the pandemic lockdowns.
Without a doubt.
The financial and behavioral data from 2020 and 2021 paints a wildly unprecedented picture of consumer behavior.
It was a perfect storm of psychological isolation and just bizarre economic conditions.
Right.
During that intense lockdown period, the standard avenues for spending disposable income completely vanished overnight.
You couldn't do anything.
People were not traveling, they were not booking flights, they were not eating at restaurants, they were not buying concert tickets, and they were not paying for daily commuting costs.
Everything just stopped.
Because of this forced halt in normal consumption, nationwide disposable income surged to historic levels. In the United Kingdom alone, economists estimated that collective disposable consumer income rose by a staggering £100 billion.
100 billion pounds of excess cash just sitting in checking accounts with absolutely no physical outlet.
Yeah, it was massive societal level doom spending waiting to happen.
I mean, you can't control the global pandemic outside your window. You can't control the supply chain shortages, but you can absolutely control whether you win an online auction for a 1995 Mazda.
Exactly. It was a coping mechanism.
It was a search for joy in a very dark, restrictive time.
People had an unprecedented amount of unstructured time on their hands. They were stuck at home, they were feeling isolated, and they felt a profound lack of control over their reality.
So they went online.
Yep. And they started browsing these rapidly emerging, highly curated digital car auction platforms. These websites essentially gamified the car buying process.
They really did.
They provided daily entertainment, comment sections, and community engagement. Suddenly, with that extra disposable income sitting there, placing a $10,000 bid on a rad-era 1992 Volvo wagon or a pristine Honda Civic didn't seem so crazy.
It was a way to buy a project, right? To buy a dream of a future road trip, to buy a tangible piece of mechanical joy to put in the garage.
That's exactly what it was.
So taking a step back, what does this massive influx of youth and digital money mean for the mechanics of the classic car market as a whole?
It represents the total democratization of the hobby. For decades, the phrase classic car hobby was heavily stereotyped.
Oh, heavily.
It conjured an image of wealthy, older gentlemen standing around in tailored blazers on manicured golf courses at elite physical auctions in Monterey.
Bidding millions of dollars on ultra-rare, perfectly restored concourse vehicles that were treated like museum artifacts.
Exactly. Cars treated like blue-chip stocks or treasury bonds.
You buy it, you put it in a hermetically sealed bubble, you never start the engine because miles hurt the resale value, and you just wait for it to appreciate.
Right. Commodity investments entirely divorced from the act of driving. But this new digital landscape, fueled by these younger buyers, is violently shifting the market away from that sterile environment.
They want to actually drive them.
Exactly. They are flocking to affordable, usable, driver-quality cars on digital platforms. They do not care if the original paint has a scratch on the fender.
Or if the leather on the driver's seat has some wear and tear.
In fact, they prefer it. They are buying these cars for love, for memory, and for the tactile sensory experience of operating them. They want to put hundreds of miles on them on the weekends.
Which brings us to the actual mechanical reality of this trend, because we clearly understand what they are buying and we see the immense power of 90s nostalgia. But there has to be more to it than just fond memories of playing Gran Turismo on a PlayStation. I mean, you're talking about the Amazon Prime generation.
Right, the kids who want everything yesterday.
These are kids who get palpable anxiety if a web page takes more than 4 seconds to load. You cannot convince me they're willingly choosing an old, potentially unreliable 30-year-old machine over a modern, hyper-efficient, incredibly safe new car purely for the aesthetic.
Well, you're right. It's not just aesthetic.
And this is where our source material points to the deep, almost philosophical appeal of the analog experience.
This is perhaps the single most important mechanism of our entire deep dive today. Let's look at the physical reality of a modern vehicle.
Okay.
If you go to a dealership today and pop the hood of a car built in 2024, what do you actually see?
Honestly, you see a massive featureless piece of black plastic. It covers the entire engine bay. You can't see the spark plugs. You can't see the fuel injectors.
Nothing.
It just looks like a sealed server room in a Silicon Valley tech company.
Exactly. Modern cars are marvels of engineering, but they are heavily reliant on incredibly complex, deeply interconnected electronic systems. They are rolling computers.
Yeah.
If a single wheel speed sensor fails or a microchip in the transmission control module glitches, the entire car might throw itself into limp mode.
Where it just refuses to go over 20 miles an hour.
Exactly, to protect itself.
Yeah.
And you, the owner, the person holding the title to the vehicle, are completely and utterly powerless.
You literally cannot fix it.
You have to call a flatbed tow truck,
Right.
take it to a specialized dealership where a technician plugs it into a proprietary brand-specific computer just to read the encrypted code to tell you which black box failed.
So for the average person, modern cars are essentially unfixable appliances.
They are sealed black boxes. You are locked out of your own property.
Wow, yeah.
But classic vehicles, even those young timers from the 1980s and 1990s, are fundamentally analog machines. Yes, they might have early electronic fuel injection, but they run on mechanical principles you can actually see with your own eyes.
You can touch them with your hands and intellectually understand them.
Fuel, air, and spark. Cables actuating throttle bodies. Vacuum lines routing air. Rubber belts spinning alternators.
It's all just physics.
Right. They can be diagnosed, repaired, maintained, and modified with basic mechanical deduction and a standard $100 set of hand tools you can buy at any local hardware store.
And young people are acutely recognizing this difference.
They really are.
That same survey data we mentioned earlier showed that 34% of millennials confidently ticked the box saying, I fix my own stuff.
Over a third of them.
But again, I have to play the skeptic here. We are supposedly the generation of instant gratification. Why would a generation so completely obsessed with digital convenience willingly choose a machine that requires manual, dirty labor and might literally break down on their way to work on a Tuesday morning?
Well, it is precisely because of that overwhelming digital convenience that they are seeking this out. Think about the texture of our daily lives. We spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day staring at flat glass screens, manipulating digital abstractions.
Yeah, that's true.
We tap a piece of glass, and a pre-made meal arrives at our front door. We tap another piece of glass, and an algorithm curates an endless feed of entertainment. We tap a button, and a car shows up to take us home.
Everything is seamless.
We live in a world where everything we interact with is a sealed, unrepairable black box. From our smart refrigerators that need software updates to make ice, to our smartphones, to our daily commuter cars.
We have achieved incredible frictionless convenience.
But the cost of that convenience is that we have surrendered all of our agency. The average person has absolutely no idea how the physical infrastructure of their world actually works anymore.
We are passengers in our own lives. We have no idea how to fix the things we rely on to survive.
And psychologically, that creates a deep, often subconscious, ambient anxiety. It creates a lingering feeling of helplessness.
Yeah, I can totally feel that.
An analog car offers a very rare, very potent antidote to that modern helplessness. It offers a sandbox of absolute agency and tangible control.
Because you can actually see the problem.
Exactly. When an analog car breaks down, it doesn't just throw an encrypted error code to a server in the cloud. It communicates with you physically.
It makes a grinding noise. It leaks a specific colored fluid onto the driveway. It shudders.
Yes, and you can open the hood, visually trace the mechanical problem. You can see that a belt is snapped or a hose has a visible crack in it.
And you can fix it with your own 2 hands and a wrench.
The deep chemical satisfaction that comes from that tangible, dirty, bloody-knuckled problem solving is immense. It provides a grounding physical reality that our frictionless digital lives completely lack.
It is a reclamation of competence. It's proving to yourself that you can still manipulate the physical world. And, one of our sources, a longtime collector, shared a truly perfect illustrative story about this exact dynamic.
Oh, the Subaru story. I love this one.
Yeah. He wrote about his daughter, who is part of this younger generation, and an experience she had on a road trip. She was on a grueling 6-hour highway drive for work in a 2006 Subaru Outback.
Now, a 2006 Subaru isn't an ancient classic, but is old enough to have its quirks, and it straddles that line between analog and early digital architecture.
Right, and somewhere along the lonely stretch of highway, the entire HVAC system and the radio unit completely failed. The screens went blank, the air stopped blowing, the whole center console just died.
Now, for a vast majority of drivers today, that is an immediate panic moment. You lose your climate control, you lose your navigation, you assume the electrical system is failing.
You pull over, you call a tow truck, your trip is ruined, and you feel completely helpless on the side of the road.
But she didn't panic. Because she had been raised around the garage, she had that baseline of mechanical agency.
She pulled over to a safe spot, and she called her dad. And they didn't look up the nearest dealership, they brainstormed.
They talked through the symptoms like doctors diagnosing a patient.
Exactly. The 2006 Outback uses an early CAN bus network where different computer modules talk to each other. Sometimes those modules get trapped in a logic loop and simply freeze up, just like a frozen web browser.
So they deduced that it wasn't a blown fuse or the burnt wire. The system probably just needed a hard reset to clear the logic loop.
So, sitting on the shoulder of the highway, this young woman pops the hood, digs into her tool bag, takes out a wrench, and physically disconnects the negative battery terminal.
Amazing.
She lets the car sit for a few minutes to drain the residual power from the capacitors, forcing the modules to completely lose their frozen state. Then she reconnects to the terminal, tightens down the bolt, gets back in the driver's seat, and turns the key.
And boom, the HVAC system boots back up, the radio comes on, and everything works perfectly.
Think about the massive psychological impact of that moment.
She must have gotten back onto the highway feeling like an absolute superhero.
She conquered the machine. She wasn't at its mercy. She commanded it.
She encountered a failure, she deduced the cause, she applied a physical solution, and she triumphed.
That story perfectly encapsulates why teaching young people about cars isn't just about turning wrenches or learning how internal combustion works.
It is fundamentally about building unshakable confidence.
Yeah.
It is about teaching them that the physical world is navigable, understandable, and subject to their will.
Which brings us to the practical application of all this theory. If you are listening to this and you are a parent, an uncle, an older sibling, or just a mentor, and you are thinking, I want to give this profound gift of agency and passion to the kids in my life, the sources we reviewed provide an absolute masterclass on how to do it.
The art of automotive brainwashing, so to speak.
Exactly. And it all starts, very simply, with immersion into the community.
The absolute lowest hanging fruit, universally agreed upon by longtime enthusiasts, is the weekend Cars and Coffee meetup.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, these are informal, grassroots gatherings that happen in random parking lots, outside coffee shops, or at local parks all over the world on Saturday or Sunday mornings.
They are completely egalitarian. You do not have to own $1 million Ferrari to show up. You don't have to pay an entry fee. You don't even have to own a car at all.
You just grab a cup of coffee and walk the lot.
And the mechanics of that walk are crucial. The advice from the experts is to walk the rows of cars with your kid and simply talk.
The biggest mistake a mentor can make is turning it into a dry, technical lecture. You do not need to explain overhead cam architecture or suspension geometry to a 7-year-old.
They'll just tune you out.
Exactly. You just ask simple, aesthetic questions. What do you like about that green car? What do you not like about that big truck over there? Why does that car look angry?
It's about establishing a dialogue. You are showing them the incredible, boundless diversity of automotive expression. You might point out a dented primer gray car you used to own when you were broke, or a car you had a poster of on your wall.
You tie your personal history to the metal sitting in front of them.
And simultaneously, it proves to the child that this is not a solitary, lonely obsession.
Right. When they see hundreds of people of all ages and backgrounds happily standing around drinking coffee and admiring these machines, they realize it is a massive, welcoming tribe.
The sources also heavily emphasize the vital role of specific charities and youth-oriented car clubs.
Yeah. There are organizations out there dedicated solely to putting teenagers in the driver's seats of historic vehicles to teach them safe operation and maintenance.
Because in any hobby, whether it's cars, sports, or music instant community, is the single biggest hook for long-term retention. If your friends are there, they will stay.
But this immersion doesn't just happen at car shows. It has to permeate the home environment.
The passive versus active media immersion, I found this part fascinating.
Passive immersion is brilliant. It is the background radiation of car culture.
So you mean like intentionally leaving classic car magazines scattered on the living room coffee table?
Exactly. Or leaving a parts catalog in the bathroom. The kid might just glance at the glossy photos of shiny paint at first, but eventually, out of sheer boredom, they start reading the articles.
They start absorbing the vocabulary. They learn what a carburetor is or what horsepower means, simply by being near the words.
It is the exact same pedagogical principle as learning a second language through immersion.
Right.
If you want a young child to become fluent in Spanish, you do not sit a 5-year-old down at a desk with a dry grammar textbook and flashcards. They will rebel.
You simply surround them with the culture. You play the music in the kitchen, you have casual conversations around them, you leave the books out until their brain naturally starts making the synaptic connections.
They start speaking it without ever realizing they were actively being taught. That is the magic of induction by osmosis.
But the experts in our sources are very clear that passive osmosis only gets you so far.
Yeah, eventually it has to transition into active, engaged media consumption. Lots of families watch enthusiast television shows together in the evenings. Things like restoration shows, British motoring shows, or live broadcasts of massive classic car auctions.
But the critical failure point for parents is just sitting there, staring blankly at the screen.
Exactly. If you use the television as a babysitter, it is a missed opportunity. The mentor must make the viewing experience interactive.
So if you are watching a reality show where a team is restoring a wrecked 1970 muscle car, grab the remote and pause it.
Force a debate. Ask the kid, would you have painted it that bright orange color? Do you think they should have kept the original slow engine to keep it authentic, or were they right to drop a modern, powerful engine into it?
Make them defend their aesthetic and mechanical choices.
Or if you were watching a live auction block, turn it into a high-stakes guessing game.
Yeah.
Before the gavel falls, make everyone in the room guess the final hammer price.
You are secretly teaching them how to analyze market trends and value conditions in real time.
Yes.
And I absolutely loved this specific, highly actionable tip from one of the veteran collectors we read. Give them the camera.
Oh, that's such a good one.
When you go back to that Sunday morning car show, hand the kid an old digital camera or a spare smartphone and give them a mission. Tell them to photograph the specific cars or the specific details like a cool hood ornament or a strange wheel that they personally think are cool.
And here is the vital part. When you post those pictures to your social media or send them to your group chat of car buddies, make absolutely sure you give the kid loud public photo credit.
That is a masterstroke of developmental psychology. Validation from adults fuels childhood passion.
When a child sees that their unique aesthetic eye, their personal choice of subject matter, is valued, praised, and shared by the adults in this community, it locks them in emotionally.
They transition from being a passive observer, being dragged along by their parent, to a recognized contributing member of the culture.
That is parenting gold right there. You are giving them a seat at the table.
But walking a parking lot and taking photos is still just observing. If you want to permanently cement this passion, you have to force a shared physical struggle. You have to take it from the screen in the parking lot into the real, tangible, greasy world.
We have to move from passive immersion to hands-on core memory-building experiences.
And one of the most accessible foundational ways to start this is through miniatures.
Miniatures are incredibly powerful, often overlooked tools for developing scale understanding and mechanical sympathy.
We aren't just talking about buying them a massive bucket of fantasy-proportioned die-cast cars with jet engines and shark fins.
While those are fun toys, the sources emphasize the importance of acquiring models of practical, recognizable, real-world cars.
One enthusiast in our sources specifically highlighted a vivid childhood memory of possessing a Corgi brand, metallic burgundy Volvo 245 station wagon model.
Think about the psychological bridge that specific model builds. A fantasy rocket car is just a toy. It exists only in the imagination. But a meticulously detailed scale model of a boring, practical Volvo station wagon or a car identical to the one parked in their own driveway allows the child to project themselves into reality.
They can hold it in their hand, examine the doors, and imagine themselves actually getting behind the wheel and driving it to the grocery store. It grounds the fantasy in the real world.
And that scales up beautifully to actual mechanical assembly.
Hmm.
The sources talk about the value of building and repairing radio-controlled buggies together, specifically the high-end hobbyist ones that come in hundreds of pieces.
These aren't just toys you buy off the shelf at a big box store. They are masterclasses in engineering.
They feature actual, miniature independent suspension systems, real fluid-filled gear differentials, tiny shock absorbers that require you to manually fill them with specific weights of oil.
Sitting at the kitchen table and building one of those with a kid teaches them the exact same mechanical principles, how a differential splits power, how a shock absorber dampens a spring that they will use on a full-size car 10 years later.
But if you really truly want to forge an unbreakable core memory, the sources point to the ultimate crucible, the sight-unseen road trip.
Oh yes, the road trip is the great American narrative. But to maximize the impact, it cannot be a sterile, well-planned vacation in a brand new minivan. It has to be a genuine risk.
I am utterly obsessed with this story from our source material. This is the stuff of absolute legend, and it perfectly illustrates everything we've talked about regarding analog problem solving.
Detail this Memphis trip for us because it is wild.
Okay, so one of the longtime enthusiasts recounted a defining story from when his oldest daughter was just 5 years old. He made the highly questionable, incredibly brave, yet ultimately brilliant decision to purchase a 1979 Mercedes-Benz 450 SEL 6.9.
Wow. And he bought it completely sight unseen from a seller located in Memphis, Tennessee.
Sight unseen. Let's provide some context here. A 1979 Mercedes 6.9 is not a simple car. It is an immensely complex, high-drop pneumatic suspension-equipped, heavy German luxury land yacht that is 40 years old.
And he didn't even inspect it before handing over the money.
Exactly. And instead of doing the rational thing, which would be hiring a transport company to put it on a flatbed truck and safely deliver it to his driveway, he decided to fly to Memphis with his 5-year-old daughter.
With a 5-year-old?
The plan was to pick up this unproven, decades-old, incredibly complex machine and drive it 900 miles, which translates to roughly a 13-hour highway drive all the way back home.
I just can't imagine doing that with a kindergartner.
And of course, because it is a 40-year-old European car on a long journey, things immediately went wrong. They hit a wall of 98-degree sweltering southern heat, and the automatic climate control system completely failed.
No air conditioning, just roasting inside a glass and steel box.
A literal nightmare scenario.
But the father did not panic. He pulled over to the side of the blistering highway. He pulled out his toolkit.
He knew the mechanical architecture of these cars, and he figured out that the climate control servo, a notoriously finicky, complex aluminum block full of vacuum lines and rubber diaphragms that directs the hot and cold air, was physically stuck.
The internal plunger had jammed.
So he took a heavy metal lug wrench out of the trunk, located the servo under the hood, and literally hit it with the wrench.
Percussive maintenance at its absolute finest.
But it worked. The physical shock of the lug wrench unstuck the internal valve against the vacuum pressure, the system freed up, and cold air started blasting through the vents.
That is incredible.
They got back in and completed the journey. And that grueling, sweaty, stressful trip was so profoundly impactful, so deeply memorable for that little girl, that it accidentally became a family rite of passage.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Years later, when his second daughter approached her 5th birthday, her very first question to her father was, "When do I get my 5-year trip?"
She had been watching her older sister and waiting her entire conscious life for her turn in the crucible.
Precisely. So, sensing the golden opportunity to expand the classic car fleet and bond with his youngest daughter, he started hunting for another car.
And what did he get this time?
This time, he found a pristine pearl black Mercedes 190E 2.3 16 valve. It's a legendary high-revving homologation special from the 80s.
Oh, gorgeous car.
And in true bizarre car-buying fashion, the adventure started before they even got in the car. He purchased it from a seller in New Jersey who was forced to sell the vehicle because he had recently lost his medical clearance to drive after literally surviving being hit in the head by an airplane.
You cannot write fiction that good. The eccentric characters you meet in this hobby, the airplane guys and the eccentric hoarders, are half the reason you do it.
They really are.
But I have to stop you here and put on my rational, safety-conscious adult hat for a second. Taking a 5-year-old child on a 13-hour highway drive in a 40-year-old unproven car that was bought sight unseen. You have to admit, that sounds like a recipe for an absolute unmitigated disaster.
Oh, sure.
You could be stranded on the side of a dangerous interstate at midnight with a crying child. Why not just pay the $800 to ship the car on a truck? fly home comfortably in a commercial jet, and let the kid sit in the car safely in the driveway when it arrives.
Because if you choose the flatbed, you are prioritizing convenience over meaning.
Okay, explain that.
If we delve deeply into the developmental psychology of memory making, shipping the car simply creates a financial transaction. The car arrives on a truck, it rolls off, it's a neat, shiny object in the driveway, and that is the end of the story.
There is no narrative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But flying to a strange city and driving it home, that creates a quest.
A quest. I like that framing.
It is the hero's journey, but it takes place in a 1979 Mercedes instead of a mythical forest. And the breakdowns, the 98-degree heat, the roadside repairs with the lug wrench, those aren't perceived as disasters in the eyes of a child as long as the parent stays calm.
Those are adventures.
In developmental psychology and education, there is a core concept known as productive struggle. When a child watches their parent face an unexpected, stressful obstacle, remain entirely calm, problem solve with their own hands, and physically overcome the obstacle, it leaves an indelible, permanent mark on their psyche.
It teaches profound resilience.
Those shared hardships, those inside jokes they will share for the rest of their lives about the airplane guy in New Jersey or the magic wrench that fixed the AC, those forge an unbreakable emotional bond between the child, the parent, and the machine itself.
The car stops being an object made of steel and rubber, and it becomes a member of the family with this shared, hard-fought history.
You literally give the car a soul through your shared suffering.
That is beautiful. And it leads us perfectly to the final necessary stage of this mentoring journey. You can look at cars at shows, you can watch television shows about restoring them, you can ride shotgun across the country and hold the flashlight while your dad hits a servo with a wrench.
But the hook is never truly permanently set until you are the one in the driver's seat, holding the keys, controlling the machine.
And according to the veteran enthusiasts in our sources, the absolute pinnacle of this initiation is mastering the manual transmission.
The stick shift. It is jokingly referred to in the wider car community as the millennial anti-theft device, because so few people in the general public know how to operate one anymore.
Which is highly ironic because, as we saw in the market data earlier, the youth are actually the ones actively seeking out and buying the manual transmission Miatas.
Exactly. But for the general public, it is absolutely a lost arcane art.
It is. But teaching a young teenager to drive a manual transmission is about so much more than just the mechanics of gear selection. It is a masterclass in physics.
It's teaching them to understand the physics of momentum. It is teaching them to turn off the radio and actively listen to the pitch and mechanical strain of the engine.
It is teaching them to physically feel the exact bite point of the clutch disc engaging the flywheel through the muscles in their left leg.
It forces a level of total required engagement with the machine that an automatic transmission completely masks. You cannot be distracted when you're driving a manual. You are a vital component of the drivetrain.
Our source material had a brilliant, highly relatable anecdote about this specific process. One father talked about letting his kids practice operating the clutch on a long, sloping gravel driveway when they were barely 13 years old.
Oh, the hill starts.
Right. He would have them practice hill starts over and over again, feeling the car inevitably start to roll backwards, fighting the panic, and learning exactly how to catch the weight of the car by balancing the throttle input with the release of the clutch.
And he noted a hilarious running joke in his family, didn't he?
Yeah. They would all watch reality TV shows together, specifically the global travel show The Amazing Race, and the whole family shared this running, smug observation. Whenever the frantic contestants on The Amazing Race get off a plane in a foreign country, sprint to the rental car counter, jump into their European rental car, and suddenly realize it has 3 pedals on the floor.
The ones who don't know how to drive a manual transmission usually lose that leg of the race and often lose the entire $1 million prize.
Exactly. It ceases to be a niche hobbyist trick and becomes a very tangible, highly consequential life skill.
It proves to the teenager that mechanical competence actively opens doors and prevents you from being stranded, both literally on a foreign roadside and metaphorically in life.
But beyond just the physical act of driving, the final crucial step in this mentorship masterclass is integrating the child into the actual financial ownership experience.
Giving them a real voice in the process. The car buying and selling process in a family shouldn't just happen behind closed doors at a dealership while the kids wait in the lobby.
No, the sources strongly suggest allowing the kids to act as an advisory board with actual respected veto power over the family fleet.
Exactly. One family documented a perfect example of this. When it was finally time to replace a deeply beloved family car, a majestic Mercedes 560 SEL they had affectionately named King Joffy, the parent didn't just log onto a website and buy a new crossover.
He gave his teenage daughter the specific high-stakes task of actively researching the replacement market.
She was put in charge. She had to look at long-term reliability ratings of different models, calculate real-world gas mileage, get insurance quotes, and analyze crash safety data.
She compiled the data, presented her findings to the family, and together, based on her research, they selected a bulletproof, highly reliable 1992 Volvo 240.
She had intellectual ownership of the decision long before she ever had legal ownership of the car. She put the work in.
And that strategy culminates in what the experts call the ultimate trump card, the pre-licensed car.
This is a phenomenal, highly effective tactic if you happen to have the driveway space and the modest budget required to pull it off.
The strategy is to hunt down and buy a cheap, safe, slightly battered putter-around project car for the teenager before they turn 16. You buy it when they're 14 or 15 years old, long before they can legally take it on the road.
It's exactly like giving a teenager a Fender Stratocaster guitar before they even know how to play a full G chord. If you buy a kid a guitar, you do not hide the guitar in the closet, out of sight, until they finish 6 months of boring music theory lessons.
That kills the passion.
You buy a guitar stand, and you put that Stratocaster right in the corner of their bedroom, having it sitting there looking at them every single day when they wake up and when they go to sleep. It builds immense, inescapable anticipation.
They pick it up, they clean it, they polish the metal frets, they pluck the strings just to hear the noise, and they sit on their bed dreaming about being on a stage under the lights.
The physical presence of the object builds the obsession. Having that old, boxy Volvo or that faded Miata sitting out there in the driveway allows the 15-year-old to walk out on a Saturday, grab a bucket of soapy water, and wash it.
It allows them to slide underneath it and help you drain the oil. It allows them to just sit in the driver's seat, roll the windows down, turn the radio on, grip the steering wheel, and vividly imagine the freedom that is coming to them in just a few short months.
It is the physical embodiment of anticipation. And if you analyze it from an industry or retail perspective, it taps into the most fundamental principle of sales. Get the merchandise into the customer's hands.
Ownership fundamentally, chemically shifts your perspective.
When a kid has actual skin in the game, when they have invested their own sweat equity into scrubbing the carpets, or spent their own hard-earned summer job money into buying a new set of floor mats or a replacement taillight lens, they undergo a permanent transition.
They are no longer just a passive observer of car culture watching YouTube videos.
They become an active, vested participant who feels personally responsible for keeping that specific machine running, and by extension, keeping the broader automotive culture alive.
Skin in the game. That is the magic ingredient. If they bleed on the engine block, they will never sell the car.
It is arguably the only proven way to ensure the culture survives the generational leap.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today, from the macroeconomics of generational wealth to the micromechanics of vacuum servos.
We really have.
Let's just quickly synthesize this journey for you listening at home to wrap up. The prevailing pessimistic myth that young people don't care about cars is officially dead, conclusively disproven by hard demographic data.
Yeah, Generation Z and millennials are enthusiastically, aggressively entering the classic car market.
But they are entirely redefining what the market looks like. They are chasing the young timers of the 80s and 90s, the Miatas, the square body trucks, the Japanese turbo icons.
And they are doing it because we live in an increasingly digital, sealed-off, unfixable modern world. These older analog machines offer a rare, desperately needed sense of physical agency, control, and bloody-knuckled problem-solving satisfaction.
And most importantly, we learn from the journals of veteran collectors that this passion isn't strictly genetic. You are not born with it. It must be actively cultivated.
Immersive mentoring through walking the lots at community events, intentional and debatable media consumption, the shared productive struggle of a miserable, hot road trip, and teaching tactile physical skills like the manual transmission is the exact blueprint for passing the torch to the next generation.
It really is a masterclass in how to share whatever it is you love with the people you care about. But before we sign off, we always like to leave you with a final provocative thought, something to mull over as you drive to work or wrench in the garage this week.
Yes, and this is a question of extrapolation based on everything we just discussed. We have firmly established today that the definition of a classic car is not a fixed point in time.
Right. It shifted drastically from the chrome-laden 1960s V8 Mustangs cherished by the boomers to the lightweight pop-up headlight 1990s Miatas coveted by Generation Z.
And that shift was driven almost entirely by the powerful, inevitable engine of childhood nostalgia. So this raises a fascinating, almost science fiction question about the future. What will the kids of Generation Alpha, the children being born right now, growing up in the 2020s, consider a classic car when they turn 30?
Oh, that is a wild thought experiment.
Will they look back at the early, rudimentary first-generation electric vehicles with that exact same misty-eyed nostalgia? Will the 2011 Nissan Leaf with a severely degraded battery pack or a first-generation Tesla Roadster become the highly sought-after, quirky, analog-feeling project car of the 2040s?
Will we see teenagers 30 years from now figuring out how to crack open battery casings to swap out individual lithium-ion cells in their driveways? The exact same passion that today's kids swap out brass jets and a carburetor.
It could happen.
That completely breaks my brain. The idea of a vintage classic EV car show where guys are standing around drinking coffee and admiring the patina on a charging port.
But based on everything we learned today about how the mechanics of nostalgia actually work, it is almost guaranteed to happen. People love what they grew up in.
It proves that the photocopier of generations isn't fading the image. It is just printing it in a completely different, unexpected set of colors.
A perfect metaphor to close on. The medium changes, but the desire to connect with the machine remains constant.
Thank you so much for diving deep into this topic with us today. Whether you drive a roaring 1970s muscle car, a nimble 90s Japanese import, or just a really reliable, perfectly modern commuter, we hope this conversation gave you a new appreciation for the absolute, enduring magic of the automobile and the profound importance of how we pass that magic on to the kids in the passenger seat.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep turning wrenches, and keep questioning the established narratives.
See you next week.